Hey, what's up, stock compounders? Brad here. So today I want to talk about Chuck Akre's new purchase of Salesforce. Okay, we saw in his 13F filing for the second quarter of 2021, he made about a 4% bet on Salesforce, a new buy. He's never owned Salesforce before. So in this video, I want to talk about, how do we figure out how high of a conviction bet this is for Chuck Akre? I'm going to walk through a few steps that I use to kind of gauge that. So this is the homepage of Akre Capital Management, just so you can get a sense for what they do there, what their investment philosophy is. The first piece of data I want to know is what is the total assets under management for Akre Capital Management. So the place I go for that is advisorinfo.sec.gov. Okay, any fund you can look up, and I think every year they have to submit what their assets under management are to the SEC. So here we can see as of December 31st, 2020, Akre Capital Management had approximately 17 billion of client assets under management. Okay, 17 billion. But I just noticed as I pulled up the website for Akre Capital Management, if you scroll all the way down, you can see at the bottom here, about Akre Capital Management, founded in 1989, blah, 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 with approximately 19.3 billion in private fund, mutual fund, and separately managed account assets as of July 31st. Okay, so this is just 2 weeks ago. This is very current data. It's not end of year last year. Obviously, a lot has happened in 2021 in the markets. It's been a very impressive boom year for the U.S. stock market. So it's nice to have very current numbers for Akre Capital Management, 19.3 billion. So if we understand the total AUM, we can get a sense for how big these bets actually are. So in order to do that, we're going to go into Ticker Terminal, one of my favorite tools for seeing the holdings of investment gurus, super investors. So Akre, I don't know which category he's under, but let's just search. We can see here, Akre Capital Management, we get all of the holdings, both from 13F filings. In the case of companies that are not US-based, such as Constellation Software, those are pulled from other sources. Topicus, which, as I've mentioned in the last video, is a recent buy from Chuck Akre, spinoff of Constellation Software. And then there's a few other kind of outside of US holdings. But what I did here is I copied all of this. The unfortunate thing about Ticker in this screen is it doesn't give us a total. Okay, it doesn't give us a total of reported value of shares held so that we can compare that to our best guess of the total assets under management. And the reason we want to know that is we want to know what the actual conviction is, right? These funds may have a lot of money sitting in cash. They may be things that aren't U.S. equities, right, that we can't see in here. So we want to know what is it as a piece of the total pie. So what I did was I copied this spreadsheet and I summed, all of the reported value of shares held. 17.8 billion was the total, okay? Which, isn't far off from the 19.3 we see on the homepage. So that gives me confidence that, these whatever it says for conviction in Ticker in terms of percent of portfolio, it's going to be fairly close, right? These numbers in Ticker are as of the end of June, right? As of the close of the second quarter. So, a lot of these stock prices are up a bit. So if I wanted to be really specific, I would go through and I would look up each of these companies, find the share price today, multiply that by the number of shares to get sort of the current value of the holdings. But, this is close enough. I just wanted to kind of cross-check a few different numbers there in terms of the total assets under management. So anyway, we can see Salesforce here at number 12 in terms of, size of investment. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind when we're trying to gauge conviction is, if you look at companies like MasterCard, Moody's, American Tower, Chuck Akre has owned those for a while, okay? This is not what he put in at cost. So if he's putting 4% of the fund into Salesforce at cost, how do we compare those to some of the seemingly higher conviction holdings, but really they're just larger holdings, okay? They're companies that have done incredibly well in terms of compounding over the decade or more that Chuck Akre has owned them. So if we want to gauge conviction, we need some sense about, what was the initial bet for MasterCard and Moody's and American Tower, and how did those compare to Salesforce? So we're going to take a look at a really cool tool for doing that. Before we go to there, real quick, I also looked up the compound annual growth rate in ticker for each of these companies. You guys, Chuck Akre's portfolio, it's like a museum of great long-term compounders. I mean, it's quite incredible. Actually, I wanted to read a little snippet from Richer, Wiser, Happier. Chuck Akre does make an appearance in here on page 197. Just gives a little bit of an overview about how Akre invests. So Chuck Akre focuses narrowly on owning a few well-run businesses that earn attractive returns on capital and have the ability to keep reinvesting their free cash flow at high rates of return. Okay, that is the key. Have the ability to keep reinvesting their free cash flow at high rates of return. And then he has the restraint to leave things well alone. Okay, so find great businesses and then let them do their thing. That's really the magic for Chuck Akre. He has held Markel for 27 years and made more than 100 times his money. He has owned Berkshire Hathaway for 42 years. Incredible. His largest holding, American Tower Corporation, which, as you can see here, is no longer his largest holding, but pretty close. American Tower has risen from 79 cents per share to $260 per share since 2002. So that's a little bit about Chuck Akre's framework for investing. But you can see here the compound annual growth rate for these companies over kind of the longest period that ticker tracks, which is usually 15 or 16 years, which I think is important because it includes the global financial crisis that happened 13 or so years ago. I think that's important when you're looking at returns to factor in, at least one big recession or depression. So you can see down here, Salesforce has the third highest compound annual growth rate over the last decade and a half of all of these top holdings. The only two that are higher are MasterCard and Constellation Software. So that's notable. But anyway, let's get into how to gauge how does this initial stake in Salesforce compare to MasterCard and Moody's. So what we're going to do is click on Chuck Akre in Dataroma. And I want to click on this history tab, okay? So this is awesome. This is going to show us through time what the portfolio value is, and then biggest holding down through however many this shows, what it's like, top 20 holdings. Okay, it shows the highest 20 holdings, and then if you hover, it shows what the percentage of the portfolio is for each of these. So here's how I would go about looking at, history of MasterCard, history of Moody's. What did that progression look like in terms of initial stake and how it changed over time? So I'm going to do Command F, and I'm just going to look at MasterCard, okay, MA. So I'm searching for MA in this document. And then I can see highlighted, MasterCard has been basically the biggest holding, one of the top 2 holdings for the last 3 years, okay? In the top 3 for, 7 years or so. But we go back to when he first bought MasterCard, okay? It looks like it was Q2 of 2010. It was a 1.8% of total assets under management, which were, only 333 million back then, compared to 19.3 billion now. Pretty incredible. So 1.8%. Next quarter, it went up to 3.6%, 6.9%, 8%, 10%, and then basically up to 12%. So, within about a year, we bought here 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters. It's about 10%. Okay, so it took about a year for MasterCard to be, one of the most dominant positions in Chuck Akre's portfolio. So that's MasterCard. Let's take a look at Moody's real quick. MCO. So again, Moody's has been very dominant in the portfolio, even further back, probably I'd say back about 9 years. But you can see here that Moody's first showed up in the first quarter of 2012. It was a 4.4% stake, okay, which is pretty close to what Salesforce is in Q2 of 2021. Went up to 5.3, 6.3, 8, 8, and about 10% after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarters. Okay, so it looks like Chuck Akre likes to get a full position on. We're only looking at 2 examples here, but after about a year, okay, it takes him to sort of buy in to a position, at least in these 2 examples. So it will be very interesting to see with Salesforce if that same trend applies. Presumably some of that depends on, how Chuck Akre is seeing fair value, sort of intrinsic value for Salesforce versus the price that the market is serving up. If that runs away, we might not see this same kind of 1 year duration to a full position. And of course, we're looking back here at how he entered positions 10 years ago, right? His framework for that may have changed. But still, I think this gives us some useful insights into how Chuck Akre may be looking at Salesforce. And to me, it looks like it's consistent with how he's entered other big positions in his portfolio. Let's just take a look at the 3rd largest to see if that's a similar story, or, well, I mean, American Tower he's owned for more than, this goes back in Dataroma. So we're not going to be able to see any trends with American Tower. Let's just take a peek at one more, Visa. Let's see if we can glean anything from Visa. Visa. Okay, we can first spot Visa in Q1 of 2012. Let me just see if that's about a 4% stake. Okay, so fairly consistently, it looks like Akre likes to start with something around 4% of assets. We saw with MasterCard, it was around 2%. With Moody's, it was around 4%. With Visa, it looks like it was around 4%. So this looks like it's a pretty consistent initial stake for him to start buying in. Presumably, he'd like to have a full position in Salesforce within a year. That's at least consistent with a few of his largest holdings. Of course, you can go down the list and check others, but I think you guys get the picture with this exercise. So it'll be interesting to see, in the next couple of quarters, if Chuck Akre continues to buy into Salesforce, all the way up to something like a 10%, position compared to assets under management, or if it's different in terms of Salesforce. But knowing that, looking at that framework through the history in Dataroma, initially looking at this, a 12th largest position, you might not think it's very high conviction, but based on Akre's framework in the past, it could very well be something that's really exciting him. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys. Anybody who's interested in Salesforce, this recent buy from Chuck Akre may give you a nudge to really do some digging into that business. So just wanted to share some of that. Chuck Akre is one of the investors I would like to get to know better. I haven't done much reading on him. If any of you have any great resources, books or otherwise, to learn more about his investment process, I'm sure there are probably books written on him. I'd like to sink my teeth into some of those. So let me know in the comments if you guys have any recommendations. And yeah, what you think of both his buy of Salesforce and his buy of Topicus in the second quarter of 2021. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.